Trump, I always said, is the first real black president. Now, I wrote back as far as July 2015, I said, despite his skin color, Obama is a pretty white president. He was pretty white. He's a product of elite American institutions, corrupt Chicago politics, constantly derided by the black community for letting them down. But consider by contrast, this is July 2015, what the effect of a Donald Trump presidency could be for black Americans. For one thing, a Republican president would do a far better job of insisting that places like Baltimore and Ferguson are policed properly. Whacking black families on welfare and turning a blind eye to crime, the Democrat way, is why so many black Americans are miserable and why we have riots. But more crucially, his stance on immigration would immeasurably benefit African Americans. It is they who suffer when America does nothing to stem the tide of illegal aliens pouring over the border. It's harder for them to get jobs, and wages are pushed down even further. Normally what happens with sizable immigrant populations is that existing groups start to move up the ladder. They become middle class while the immigrants take low-paid and menial jobs. In LA, even in very black neighborhoods, the construction workers are all Latino. But that upward ratchet doesn't seem to be happening in the overwhelmingly Democrat-run black ghettos in flux in America today. Blacks aren't benefiting from the Hispanic invasion. In fact, it's making their lives even worse. Well, lo and behold, I said it, and 2 years later it has come to pass. Black Americans are realizing what I've said all along. Since 2016, a new survey shows black support for Donald Trump has doubled. Perhaps it's because black communities are realizing what I predicted all of that time ago. Black support for Donald Trump has doubled since 2016, according to a new report. You can read about it in Breitbart. Perhaps since African Americans have realized, they've seen the effect of limiting illegal immigration on their wages, and, well, Nancy Pelosi. There's only so much cringy, pandering old white lady a guy can take, especially when the other dude is the one putting money in your back pocket. Not to mention the fact that Trump's swagger and love of shiny gold things is tailor-made for rap culture. There's a reason Trump was in so many rap and hip-hop songs, right up until he decided to run as a Republican for president, of course, upon which moment he immediately, overnight, became a racist. I bring all this up because it is, of course, conservative icon Martin Luther King's special day today. Nike is celebrating in the only way it knows how, with sneakers totally, vastly out of the reach of most black people. They've just been co-opted, like gay pride and the feminist movement, Martin Luther King Day, into insincere virtue signalers, communists, atheists, and the biggest virtue signaler of them all, corporate America. Nike's shoes, they're new. They're the Nike Air Force One Low Equality, out today, ugly as hell. I'm sure the little brown children who made them are super grateful. These rich white hipsters posturing for equality. In case you're wondering, yes, they are hideous, unlike the Jordan 1 Retro Black History Month edition from last year, which I always wear when I'm infiltrating Antifa protests. They're actually quite nice. I like those. Of course, Black History Month has a slightly different meaning in my household and always ends in conflict. My husband does not appreciate me bringing out the photo albums of ex-boyfriends. Part of the continuing expulsion of Christianity from public life is happening today with Martin Luther King Day. Lee Habib over at Laura Ingram's brilliant but appallingly named website, LifeZet, says the following, quote, "It's a story you won't hear anywhere this week, as the life of Martin Luther King is celebrated, the story of the battle for the soul of a nation between King and his rival, Malcolm X. It was a battle between a Baptist preacher and a Nation of Islam disciple. And if you listen carefully, what you'll hear is deafening silence about the one element of King's life without which none of his efforts would have been possible: his devotion to his faith and his God, his devotion to Jesus Christ." Lee Habib quotes King's speech, "A Knock at Midnight," which is, you can find it on Google, but journalists typically don't know about it, so you may well never have heard of it. He started with a quote from Luke, which is, "Which of you who has a friend will go to him at midnight and say to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has arrived on a journey, and I have nothing to set before him.'" Martin Luther King followed that with this: "Although this parable is concerned with the power of persistent prayer, it may also serve as a basis for our thought concerning many contemporary problems and the role of the church in grappling with them. It is midnight in the parable. It is also midnight in our world, and the darkness is so deep that we can hardly see which way to turn. it is midnight within the social order. And Martin Luther King spent some time then talking about the miracles of modern science, but then he delivered one of the passages that I find most remarkable in any of his speeches, and which demonstrate to me how far the left has moved from the let's look at the contents of character and not get preoccupied with the color of skin philosophies of Martin Luther King. And this is his critique of moral relativism, the sort of moral relativism and postmodern horseshit that's given us gender studies and social justice and seeks to tear down the institutions that make us free here in the West. He says, quote, "Moral principles have lost their distinctiveness. For modern man, absolute right and wrong are a matter of what the majority is doing. Right and wrong are relative to likes and dislikes and the customs of a particular community. We have unconsciously applied Einstein's theory of relativity, which properly described the physical universe, to the moral and ethical realm. This mentality has brought a tragic breakdown of moral standards, and the midnight of moral degeneration deepens." Now, if you know anything about Christianity at all, you will know that both capitalism and freedom are entwined with the history of Christianity. Indeed, Christianity out there in the world today is one of the primary obstacles to tyranny